TV? It used to be such a simple question. Now there's so many choices and so many ways to watch. To guide us through this changing TV land and to give us a head up on series that are starting is Rich Heldenfels. Rich is the pop culture writer for the Akron Beacon Journal. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So many of us remember when there were only 3 channels, maybe 4, right? And now there's so many options. So can you help us out here?
Well, you know, we all kind of started with that idea of these broadcast channels, at least all of us are a certain age. And we had the antennas and the rabbit ears and all those kinds of things. And we had a very limited number of selections. And that meant that everyone was watching kind of the same thing, too, that you knew that all your friends were watching, say, I Love Lucy on a given night or a show like that. And then all of a sudden, things started to change.
Okay, I remember when cable began. I mean, it was really changing everything.
Yeah, and cable, which had started out basically as a way for people to get broadcast stations better if they were living in areas where antennas weren't working as well, suddenly began bringing in its other programming from outside the market, and channels started setting up for that, and people are getting choices that way, and they're getting new alternatives. So they're getting something like a CNN and are suddenly having access to news 24 hours a day instead of just waiting for their broadcasters to have it. So the habits started to change with that. And of course, people are now starting to have to pay more for it because they're not getting those cable channels for free.
Right, and they've got special cable channels are coming up with their own series.
Absolutely, and that was a major change. And what they began to do too was when the broadcast networks were in reruns, they started putting on their own original programming. People would find that and they would start to stay with the cable and drift away in a lot of cases from what they had been used to seeing on broadcast. And
now we've got Netflix and Hulu and even Amazon Prime. So how do those work?
Well, those are cases where you have to have an internet connection or you have to have a device that will in some way let you have access to that programming. If you have a smart TV, for instance, and you're set up properly, you can see something like a Netflix. But what happens again is people are looking for programming and they have to be aware of what all these options are. So when Community, say, ends on NBC, it ends up on Yahoo. When Longmire ends on A&E, it ends up on Netflix. Arrested Development goes from Fox to Netflix. So if you're not looking for those channels or you're not looking for those programs, then you may miss out on things. Something like a Grace and Frankie with Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin, which a lot of people were asking me about, but if they didn't have the service it was on, which again was Netflix, then they've got a real problem in not being able to get to it until, let's say, it comes out on disc. So it's a real challenge for viewers, and again, there are costs attached to all of these things, so there's an expense involved as well to keep up with where the good new programs are.
It would be nice to go back to the simpler days when networks still premiered their shows every fall. Do they still do that?
There are still fall premieres, certainly with the major broadcast networks, because that's the point, again, when it seems that people still get in that habit of sitting down and watching TV. And of course, football season has started, so people have to make sure that they can see the Browns. But even there's been this shift so that there's a much more of a year-round strategy. But a lot of these shows they think will be most successful are held for the fall.
Okay. So many choices and too many channels and numbers to keep track of.
A lot to follow around, yes.
With all of these options, you're sure to find something worth watching. But wait, you have golden opportunities. My thanks to Rich Heldenfels for channeling these choices for us today.
Thanks.
To reach Rich Heldenfels, call 330-996-3582 or email him at rheldenfels@thebeaconjournal.com.